All right, so I put together this solution video. This is for section 3.4, and it had to do with the word problems with revenue and area. Number 5 was actually in the back of the book, and the answers are there. But to get this equation, we start off with, I'm have it here quick, where they give us a second equation in terms of x, but the one we did in class was in terms of p. So it was p equals something. And when you substitute that in, you had only x's in your equation. And to do that for number 5 and for number 6, you need to solve this equation for p. And that's just taking 100 and subtracting 100 and dividing by -5. So in terms of p, this is the equation that you're going to use to get this equation for revenue in terms of x. And you have to do that with number 6 as well. Number 6 gives us an equation where x equals -20p plus 500, and we want to plug this in here for x, but when we did that, we won't have revenue in terms of x or the number of items, we would have it in terms of p. So to get in terms of x, I have to subtract 500, divide by -20, and this is the equation that I will substitute in here for p, and that will leave us x times all of this. So our revenue will be in terms of x. All right, so these are the correct answers for number 6 and for number 8. And if you just want to check those and be done with it, if you're doing well, you don't have to finish watching the video. But if you want to see one of those explanations, here we go. So for number 5, again, we want to find the revenue, and we know that's the number of items times the price. And they give us price in terms of x, which is -5p plus 100. And I want to solve for p, because in this equation, I only want x's. So if I solve for p, I'm going to subtract 100 from both sides and divide by -5. So p is -1/5 plus 20. This is the equation that I'm going to put in here for p. So my revenue in terms of x is now x times -1/5 times x plus 20. And when I distribute here, I get -1/5 times x squared plus 20x. And this is our equation that we're going to use. So this is part A. Part B says to find the revenue if you have 15 items that you sell. So I want the revenue for 15 items, and I'm going to plug that in my equation. So I have -1/5 times 15 squared plus 20 times 15. And when I simplify that, this is going to be -45 plus 300, and that is 255. Part C, now they're asking us for the maximize the revenue. So here we want to find the vertex. The vertex will give us the maximum number of items to sell and the revenue for that number of items. So to find x, we're going to do minus b over 2a. and that would be, the B value is 20, so I have negative 20 over 2 times negative 1/5. So this is negative 20 divided by 2/5. That's the same thing as negative 20 divided by negative 0.4, and that would be 50. So I'm going to sell 50 items, and the revenue for 50 items is going to be, and I'm going back up here to this equation, negative 1/5 times negative 1/5 times 50 squared plus 20 times 50. And when I do the calculating on all of this, I'm going to get, this is going to end up being negative 500 plus 1,000. So the revenue is $500. In Part D, they're asking us to find the price for the maximum revenue. So they want us to find price. I'm going to go back and use the revenue equals X times P. So for the maximum, for maximizing the revenue, we had the vertex, which was 50 and 500. And I'm going to plug those in for those values and solve for P. So my maximum revenue was 500, and that equals 50 times P. So the price for each item is $10. And in Part E, we want the revenue to be greater than or equal to 480. So what is the price that gives us the revenue greater than 480? Well, revenue is X times P, and we know that X, for the maximum number of items, we had 50. So this is 50P is greater than or equal to 480, and P has to be greater than or equal to $9. This is 50, $9.60. All right, so now if we do number 6, that's very much like number 5. We're going to start with revenue equals X times P. And again, they give us that second equation in terms of X. So they tell us that X equals negative 20 P plus 500. And again, I want to solve for P. So I'm going to subtract 500. So I have X minus 500. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 20. So this is negative X divided by 20 minus 25. And that's what P is. And now I'm going to take this value for P and put it into this equation. So for Part A, I'm going to have the revenue in terms of X equals X times what P equals, negative X over 20 minus 25. So this gives us negative, I'm going to write this a little differently, 1 over 20 X squared minus 25X. So that's our equation. For Part B, we want to know the revenue based on selling 20 items. So I put 20 in for X, negative 1 over 20 times 20 squared minus 25 times 20. So this gives me 20 squared is 400, divided by 20, that's 20. So this is negative 20, and this is plus 500. 25 times 20 is 500. And add them together, and I get $480. Part C, again, asks us to find the maximum revenue, or to maximize the revenue. So in my vertex, I'm going to have the X value and the revenue based on X. So to find X, I have minus B over 2A. I'm going to come back here. The opposite of B is 25 over 2 times negative 1 over 20. Okay, so this is negative 1 over 10. So I'm dividing 25 by negative 1/10 minus B. Oops, I think I lost actually I did. I lost this should be plus here. Okay, so the number of items, 25 divided by negative 1/10 is 250 items. And to find the revenue for 250 items, I'm going to plug in negative 1 over 20 times 250 squared plus 25 times 250. And when I calculate this, I'm just going to, I did the calculations before in a graphing calculator. So I end up here with 3,125, and that would be dollars. So my vertex here for my X value, I have 250, and the maximum revenue based on 250 is 3125. Part D asks us to find the price for that maximum revenue. So if I go back and I use R equals X times P, here's X, here's R of X. So I have 3125 equals 250 times P. I'm going to divide both sides by 250, and the price is $12.50. Then in part E, I want the revenue for my maximum number for 250 to be greater than $3,000. So what price would make my revenue be greater than $3,000? Remember that revenue is X times P. So my X value is 250. So 250P is greater than 3,000. And when I divide by 250, P has to be greater than $12. All right, that's number 6. And then one more with number 8. This is an area problem. So for number 8, they're giving us 3,000 feet of fencing to enclose a rectangular area. So we know that the perimeter is 3,000. And we know here's length, here's width. So I have that my perimeter, or 3,000, equals 2 length plus 2 width. All right. Also, we're maximizing the area. So we know area is length times width. And they want us to write an equation based on the length. So they tell us the length is X. So area based on x equals x times w. So here I want to express the width in terms of x. Length is x, now width needs to be in terms of x. So if I take this equation, 3,000 equals 2x plus 2w, and if I subtract 2x, subtract 2x, I have 3,000 minus 2x equals 2w, and divide every part by 2. 1,500 minus x equals w. So up in here in my equation, I'm going to replace w with what w equals. I'm going to replace the width with a function of the length. So my area, so for part A, my area based on x, which is the length, is x, length, times width, which is 1,500 minus x. So that equation is 1,500x minus x squared, or if you want to write it as the x squared part first, I have minus x squared plus 1,500x. This is the same thing. I just flip-flop these two. All right, so for part B, they want us to find the maximum length. Okay, so the maximum length, and that's going to come from the x part, so of our vertex. So here's our length, and here's our maximum area. So x is going to be minus b over 2a. X represents length. So here's my equation I'm working with. Minus b is negative 1,500 over 2 times a, which is negative 1. So this is 750. So the maximum length is going to be 750. Sorry about that. And then in part C, they want the maximum area. And that's when I plug in 750 to find the area. So I have negative 750 squared plus 1,500 times 750. And 750 squared is negative 562,500, and then 1,500 times 750 is 112,500. When I add these together or subtract them, my maximum area is going to be 562,500 feet squared. Okay, so again, these numbers are just coming from the vertex of this equation. All right, so those are the solutions for 5, 6, and 8.